So, hi, Julie.
Hi,
Hello.
Renu.
How are you doing? Please tell me, first of all.
I'm doing well.
Okay.
It's cold and snowy here in the
Mhm,
Washington, D.C. area, but it's also I
mhm.
enjoy the stillness of winter.
Okay, great, great. So, first of all, welcome, Julie, with sincere regards. I'm really so happy to have you here because I invited you. I have few topics related to English communication, related to public speaking, and so forth. And I think you are the one who can share a lot of insights regarding this. But before starting, I need a little bit brief for my audience.
Sure.
And yeah, please.
My name is Julie Yoder. I've been working in the English language teaching field since 1996 in
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of different capacities. I've taught public school, K through 12. I have been a professor many times at both public and
Yes.
private universities. And in 2009, I started a specialized business focused on international professionals because in the Washington, D.C. area, we have a lot of international organizations and people who come here for work who are
Mm-hmm.
already quite functional in their level of English, but then
Mm-hmm.
they get into their new position in here in Washington, in the United States, and they realize their gaps are amplified immediately. So that was the basis of my business, is
Mm-hmm.
helping learners who are already advanced get through the discomfort and get to their next level with their language where
Right.
they feel confident in their work. And a big part of that is confident that they can be promoted and that they can advance their career in English.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
what I've been
Yes.
doing in different capacities since 2009. And now we have extended into groups, both in
Mm-hmm.
person and online, but always with the consistent focus on advanced level learners.
Yes, yes. And here I would like to, before starting anything, I would like to highlight that 2, 3 days ago, I had a beautiful, candid conversation with Julie, and I learned a lot. And she is one of the best, I would say, genuine person on this planet.
That's
Really,
high
really.
praise, Renu. Thank you. Well, you're obviously,
Nowadays,
you're clearly genuine as well.
thank you so much. Because nowadays, the way you expounded everything during
Mm,
the way like I think 2, 3 days ago we had that
mhm,
conversation.
mhm.
So I realized the same because nowadays it's really very challenging to find such kind of person who can tell you the right direction, right way of learning, and so on. So that's why I invited you again, and few questions are there, and just please share your insights regarding this. Okay.
I'll try my best to help.
Thank you so much. You are going to do it, I know. You are carrying such a wonderful experience and dealing with international professionals as well. So, the first question, I really very first time I'm going to discuss that particular thing, that uh, presentation skill. It
Mhm,
is very, very important to prepare ourselves before presenting anything,
mhm.
isn't it? So, how can a particular individual improve their presentation skill?
This is a great question. We have a big focus
Mm-hmm.
on this, both individually and in our group programs, because we have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of experience preparing people in lots of different fields for presentations. And I will tell
Mm-hmm.
you that usually what happens with the advanced learner, they can get the point across to their audience,
Okay.
right? That's not the
Mm-hmm.
problem. They can get the point across to their audience, but engaging with the audience,
Mm-hmm.
structuring the information in a way that's actually going to help the audience remember it, um, prompt them to ask appropriate questions, and help them to remember the information. That's a different story in your target language.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we have to take into consideration presentation styles, which are cultural.
Mm-hmm.
We have some best practices that I think we can point to as international best practices.
Mm-hmm.
But in all cases, you also have to consider your own audience and the purpose of your presentation. So I'll talk through some of the typical gaps that we see and what we usually end up working on with the clients. One is how they prepare the presentation. I've seen a lot
Okay.
of different things, and I'll tell you the two things
Right.
that don't work.
Please, please.
It may feel like you are preparing well if you script your presentation word for word, but it falls apart later because it's going to sound robotic. It's not going to sound natural. And then typically
Right.
what happens is people get so connected to this script that they have created that if someone asks a question midway through the presentation or something unpredictable happens, they shut down, right? Because their
Yes.
plan in their brain was
Yes.
to go through step one, step two, step three, step four. So it doesn't allow you to be spontaneous, and it doesn't give you the confidence to be spontaneous, which is essential in presenting. So in presenting, yes, you will be prepared and you will have your structure, but you will also expect things to come out a little differently every time. Even if you
Right.
have the type of job where you're giving the same presentation to a new audience once per month, it's going to be a little different every time. So I understand the temptation to script everything word for word. People's processes are different. I won't say don't do it, but I would say, if that's your way of processing through in English, how you're going to structure your information, that's okay. But the goal is not to read that script in the end, right?
True, true.
So what really works best is, first of all, I know that in this digital world, it might seem old-fashioned, but anytime you have something that you need to really think through in terms of structure, pen and paper first.
Right.
And, first just start writing by hand. What's the purpose here? Who's my audience? What do I want to say? What are my main points? Get that out of your brain and onto the paper. And then once you have that onto the paper, then you can start to organize it into a better flow. Okay, I'm going to
Okay.
have an introduction, and then I'm going to have my main point, and then I'm going to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk about this. And again, you can write an outline by hand, or at this point, you can go back to the digital tools and you can do
Right.
it, on your computer, no problem. But then once your structure is clear to you, and it may change, but you have to start with your basic structure. Then instead of scripting each slide, because if we're going to use visuals, I'll get to that in a moment. That's another mistake people make. You really want to write out talking points, for each section of your presentation. What are your main
Yes.
ideas? So then as you practice, you can have the talking points in front of you, but you're really
Right.
focused on the natural language of delivering, each main point for each section of your presentation.
Yes.
That's the best way to prepare. So get away from the scripting. It can work in terms of, if you have to give a presentation and you are truly above your head, your boss has asked you to do something you've never done before. I understand, people will hear you and it will be organized, but you're going to sound like a robot and you're not going to sound engaging. And especially
Yes.
these days in a hybrid environment when we're presenting online so often,
True.
this is even more challenging. So your job when you're presenting online is to bring the energy into the space.
Right. Right.
And you can only be present if you're really focused. So that is preparation twofold. Yes, you do need to prepare. You absolutely need to think through and work with your flow and your order of ideas, but then practice with the talking points rather than the script. The second one
Yes.
is the transitions. People often, they seem small, but they're huge. Particularly when you have a group presentation, and in our case, we'll often see a situation where the client is the only English learner and everybody else is American, and so they're co-presenting, so they feel a lot of pressure, right? So
Right.
they
True.
feel like, maybe person one starts, native English speaker starts, and then it switches, to the second person who's the English learner, and they feel like the audience can really see and feel the difference between the Englishes. And so they're already highly self-conscious and
Yes.
nervous. But it's important, especially if you're working with a team, to actually rehearse the presentations. I mean,
Yes.
sorry, the transitions. And what I mean is it can be something as simple as And next, my colleague Janice is going to talk to you about this topic. And so it's those types of transitions that help things flow and make it feel natural and make the presentation successful. If you're solo, you have to give extra verbal cues to the audience if you have the slides, right? So kind of think about it. How are you going to transition from slide 1 to slide 2? What are you going to say to the audience to
Right.
indicate to them, now we are transitioning?
Yes.
Is the next slide about the same topic, or are we switching topics? So you have to add in extra verbal cues. And of course, you're going to have your agenda up front so the audience can kind of see the roadmap of where you're going to go. And again, they can be quite simple. Next, we're going to look at this. Simple. And don't worry about repeating the same phrases. The point here is to give the signpost to your listeners that something is about to change. You're taking them on a journey throughout the presentation, and they need those verbal cues to know what's coming next. And they need to be rehearsed, because when people are nervous, they will often skip them. They'll just switch to the next slide and say, okay, and then read the slide. And
because when it comes,
go ahead.
No, I was about to say there when it comes to engaging an audience, so there is a huge pressure on us.
Yeah.
During the presentation time.
If
And
you
we tend to skip the
care of your
things.
audience, yeah, you can take the pressure off of yourself and off of them, right? Because you think about your own listening, what makes a good presentation we have all sat through a lot of webinars during the pandemic as things have gone digital. We have all, I'm sure, if things are not so engaging, gotten up and turned off our camera and made another coffee while we still have the audio going in the background. What's the difference between a webinar? Well, I will quietly, shut down my camera and go. I mean, they can't see you anyway in a webinar, but, I'll go and make another coffee and listen passively, versus one where, oh, no, I don't want to miss one word of what they're saying.
Very true.
That's a process to get to that point where you're the type of presenter who can engage, especially in a virtual audience. But a big part of that is people need to know where you're going. And that can be handled very simply by thinking through your transitions. And that is the one part, I know I said don't script, but that is the one part with the clients that I do script. We put in the notes after each slide exactly what they're going to say to signal to the audience, here's what's coming next, or here's the change, or we're changing topics now. And it helps you. It helps you as you're practicing, to help your memory with what's coming next. It's kind of like in acting, you're hitting your mark. The presentations, if you can have your talking points and your transition, and your talking points and your transition, it'll be a lot easier to remember for you what's coming next. And the more you practice and the more comfortable you are, then the more you can deliver confidently, because it's a complex process, right? And your goal is freeing up space in your brain to be present in the moment. And if you're nervous, that takes up space. If you don't remember what's coming next, that takes up space. If you've memorized your script, but then suddenly you have to go off script and you panic, that takes up space. Your job is to prepare as best as possible so that you can deal with the little things that come up in the moment.
Yes. And again, I would say always, whenever you want to do something, so practice then comes into the picture again. You have to practice, with this right strategy. And I completely on the same page that you should not memorize the things, the script, isn't it? But yes, you can. What is important, I believe, you just need to hit the points. And one more thing, I believe you can record yourself before the presentation.
Yes. Exactly. It's painful for people, but it's the only way to get better.
Sorry.
I did a podcast interview back in the fall with a very lovely English language professional. And when I heard the recording, I was kind of horrified, because I didn't realize how much I say sometimes. Now, thinking back, I wasn't feeling well. And if I had been thinking, I would have rescheduled the interview because my brain just wasn't sharp. And so
Mm.
he was asking me about things that were well within my experience, but the delivery wasn't good. I wasn't prepared. I didn't feel well. My brain was operating slowly. And so every other word was. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this is horrible because here I am teaching people about public speaking, and now this is out in the world and they can see what I sound like. Had I had more energy, and if I had been feeling better, I would have recorded myself. He gave me the questions in advance, so
Oh,
I could have recorded myself answering the questions as if he were there,
mhm.
and then listened back to my answers, and
Yes.
it would have gone more smoothly in the interview. But to your point, I wasn't prepared. I thought I was prepared and I wasn't. Now that was a little bit different because it was a podcast interview like this. It
Yes.
wasn't a prepared presentation, but the preparation is the same. Um,
Yes. Yes.
and I needed to think more deeply about the questions. I needed to speak my answers out loud and rehearse them. And ideally, I would have recorded myself and made adjustments from there.
True,
So it's a
true.
learning experience.
Yes, yes, only because of that. And I think the way you expounded, it is very transparent now. The 2 points you mentioned, the preparation and the transition,
Hmm.
isn't it? And you need to make a note. You have to take a diary and pen, isn't
Hmm.
it? Highlight everything and try to prepare. No need to go with the write down and memorize everything, the entire thing. Just if you want to be sound very, I have little bit of,
That's okay. Take your time.
yeah. So, yeah, I was about to say like preparation and transition, and you mentioned few points we need to keep always. Practice yourself. What is the gist? What is the objective? Identify all these aspects. Along with that, who is your audience? Because again, when it comes to presentation skill, you have to identify that one and you have to prepare accordingly.
And there's
Yes?
something related to that I want to say that's the third mistake that I see
Mhm.
people make over and over, and I understand why they do it. Some people are very adept with PowerPoint
Yeah,
and they can hide behind
true.
it, right? So they make these beautiful slides, but they pack the slides with information because then the slide
Mhm.
becomes their script, right? But then
Yes.
you're not thinking about what that looks like to the audience. And so over and over again, often when I'm rehearsing with clients, they'll come to the session with a prepared presentation and the slides, but the slides look beautiful, they look
Right.
professional, but they are so packed with information that as the person is talking, I'm, as a reader, trying to parse all that stuff on the slide, and I'm not
Mhm.
hearing what they're saying. So the
Yes.
visuals are an aid and not the other way around. The visuals are not your script.
Right.
And the less you
True.
can put on the visual, the better. It should really just be a visual representation of your main point or your
True.
main points. How some people process differently. So, visuals are wonderful. It's another way to convey the information.
Mm-hmm.
But so often, because people are nervous, or maybe it's a high stakes presentation,
Yes.
that's really for them. They're packing each slide with the information they want to give to the audience, and then they're
Mm-hmm.
using that as their guide. And that doesn't work either. That's not engaging because you can't ask
No,
people
no,
to
no.
read a bunch of tiny text, even if it's graphically displayed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually not that adept in PowerPoint. I never learned it well.
Yes.
So my slides are not grand, when I give a presentation,
Mm-hmm.
but I've also decided not to worry about it. Um, it's not, the important thing is the delivery and using the visuals as an aid. They don't have to be the most graphically beautiful slide deck that
Mm-hmm.
anyone's ever seen. That's not going to matter in
Yes.
the end. Yes, it needs to look professional, but if you're
Yes.
overloading your audience with, and that's why also to your point about practice and rehearsal,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a coach to work with, you do have a spouse or a friend or a colleague who's willing to let you
Yes.
practice with them, particularly if it's very important. Practice on your own, of course, but ideally
Mm-hmm.
practice at least one time with someone who
Right.
can give you feedback, because there's all these little things you're just not going to catch on your own.
True. Yes.
And,
Yes.
take that person to dinner later, cook them a nice dinner, take them to coffee, do something in
Yes.
exchange. But
Yes.
if you can make a
Definitely,
friend who's willing to support you in this, or have
for
some sort of
sure.
exchange where you do the same for that person,
Mhm.
this is the best way.
Great, great. And when you are, let's suppose you are preparing a presentation PPT with the help of different tools are available, but again, you have to present verbally and non-verbally in a beautiful manner so that you
Mhm.
can make a connection with your audience.
Yes, yes.
Again, you have to prepare with each single slide that what you are going to say regarding this particular slide.
Right. And then one of the things we work on in our group courses is how you interact with the visuals when you are presenting, whether that's in a
Mm-hmm.
room or
Mm-hmm.
digitally. And one of the
Yes.
best classes I took at the beginning of the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
was from a facilitator who, I thought this was great. Early on, when everything went digital,
Mm-hmm.
her group course, she changed it to epic facilitation. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to be an epic facilitator, this is what you do. This is how you're going to stand out from the pack as everything goes digital. And so sort of what you see now, my laptop stand and my lighting,
Yes.
very, very important. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to me now in 2024 how many people will still sit, in an important meeting or an important presentation, and they have the light illuminating them from the back, and
Right.
then you can't see their faces and you have weird shadows, but those basic concepts, there's a lot going on in presenting, and you might not think about them if you don't have someone to point them out to you. So our homework in this course was
Mm-hmm.
walk around your space and find the best lighting for digitally presenting. Order a different lamp if you need it. Order a spotlight if you need it. Get the right laptop stand. Make sure the framing is, you don't want this weird, there's still a lot of this going on. And I thought,
Yes,
and
right.
it's so easy to fix, and that's also part of it, and this facilitator, she would always show up with this sort
Mm-hmm.
of attractive but minimal background. Her lighting was fantastic, and her framing was always consistent, and her posture was good.
Right.
So, and also if you record your Zoom calls, this is another way to practice, because I'm looking at you, Renu, right now at
Mm-hmm.
your eyes in the screen, but I'm actually not. Now I'm looking at the camera.
Right,
You see the
right.
difference?
Yeah, why
And
not?
so that's a small thing too, because if I'm giving a presentation, I have to remind
Mm-hmm.
myself virtually, I have to remind myself, don't look at the person. If
Mm-hmm.
there is an audience and you can see them, you look at the little dot there, because that's actually where the camera is. So now I'm speaking to the camera. Now I'm speaking to Renu like we're having a conversation,
Yes,
right?
yes, we can see the difference immediately.
um, so, small things like this that you don't realize until you record and practice. And
Right.
to your point with the visuals, interacting with the visuals is a skill that has to be
Yes.
learned. These small things can really mess you up in the moment if you have not rehearsed them. If you're in a physical room
Right.
with the audience and you're nervous, you're doing well, but you're nervous and you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
engage, and you forget that your visual is over here, or maybe it's behind you, or it's over here. I'm a seasoned teacher, so I don't do the mistake anymore of actually like standing in front of my visuals and blocking them, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty common mistake when someone's nervous, right? If you're walking around
Right.
in a physical space, you might be standing in front of the screen and not even realize it. Or if you have the clicker to go through the slides and it doesn't work, or you get
Right.
stuck on a slide or there's a problem, right? Then when you're nervous, that can really throw you off. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where confidence comes in. You have to trust that, yes, things are going to happen
Yes.
and they're not a big deal. You just say to your audience, oh, please give me a moment. Ideal situation, you have an assistant there or somebody who's helping who can actually go through the slides. But again, that needs to be rehearsed because you need to talk to that person.
Again, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And you
true.
need to say, okay, we're ready for the next slide. So whether it's you doing it or somebody else doing it. So it's those physical movements
Mm-hmm.
along with the presentation that have to be rehearsed. And it
Yes.
might seem silly, people don't think about it, but it's like, okay, when I get to the end of this point in this slide, now I need to hit the button. Practice actually hitting the button while you're also looking into the camera,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of processing going on. in a
Very
presentation. A
true.
lot of heavy processing. What am I saying? Who am I talking to? How am I saying it? Am I looking at the audience? Where am I in the presentation? What's coming next? When are we doing Q&A? Oh my gosh, that person just asked me a question and now I have to decide in a split second, do I answer it now or do I say politely, we will definitely get to your question at the end of the presentation. That's another thing you have to decide in advance. Will you take questions along the way or will you save the Q&A for the end? There's no right or wrong. It depends on the type of presentation, but you need to be prepared. And if you are saving the Q&A to the end, then you need to practice your phrasing for politely telling your audience, great question. I'm going to get to that in just a few minutes. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Again, you need to give them signpost along the way.
Yeah, true.
What's coming? When can they ask? When can they engage?
Yes, yes. And I think here is like I would say that the major role of non-verbal communication as well, isn't it? Sometimes you have to go with that. So I want a little bit more clarification when it comes to body language and non-verbal communication, Julie, please.
I took acting classes in high school. I was terrible at it, but they still gave me some foundations that I call upon today. And one of the things they tell you in acting, and this is transferable to a physical presentation when you are in a room of people, is that you have to practice making eye contact with everyone and no one at the same time. So, and this can be applied to a virtual presentation as well. So that means if I'm standing on the stage and I'm trying to engage and command with the audience with my body language and my posture, you can't focus on one person in the audience and stare at them. They're going to feel it, and that's going to be very creepy.
Yes. Yeah, true.
At the same time, you cannot focus on the back wall where your line of vision is above the heads of the audience, because then you're not making the correct eye contact, right? So what you do is a blend of the two. You move your head slightly and you move around, back and forth, and you look at people very briefly, right? And you might blink and make brief eye contact and nod. So again, this takes practice. So you're looking at everyone, but no one in particular at the same time. And you're keeping your line of sight on the audience. And you're always kind of, now sometimes when you're presenting, you're also going to turn at times to your visuals. But then you're always going to turn back. And so that's the primary thing that you learn in Acting 101 that has been so valuable, is you become extremely conscious of never turning your back to the audience. And it's the same with teaching, right? Sometimes with teaching, we do have to turn to the board and write something, but then we always turn back and look, if you're always turned to the slides and pointing at the slides and you're not engaging with your eyes, that's a very easy way to lose the audience. So that consciousness of just taking up the space, standing tall or sitting tall if you're presenting virtually, and making the correct eye contact. Different cultures gesticulate. Some do, some don't. They do tell you generally. I tend to do it naturally. I'm not thinking about it when I do it, because I'm an English language teacher. I've had to do a lot of acting things out with lower level learners over the years. But anything you do on stage or in a presentation, you always kind of exaggerate. So if I'm talking to you at a coffee shop, right, I'm not gonna do these big exaggerated movements because it might attract attention, but exaggerated movements actually show up well on stage. So it might feel exaggerated to you, but it's not necessarily going to look exaggerated to your audience in a large setting like that, right?
True.
So, if you can learn, you do need to use your hands. It does tend to look more animated and active and engaging. And you can actually learn certain nonverbal gestures to, if I want to emphasize a point, I might do that. Or I might turn again and point to something on the slide. There's lots of different ways to do it. But it does help to be a little bit animated and to learn some moves on stage,
Yeah.
because if you're just kind of stiff, even with the right posture, you know, that's not terribly engaging. You're not bringing the
Yeah.
audience to you, right? How are you going to bring the audience to you? You're going to draw, you want to draw in
Yeah.
their eye.
Yeah.
And takes practice, can be deeply uncomfortable, especially if you don't like being the center of attention, which is exactly
Yes.
why I took the acting classes in high school, because I was shy and I needed it. And again, I learned that I'm not a great actor, but I did learn some fundamentals that have helped me in my work over the decades.
Great, great to know. It just I want to mention over here, Julie, it is just a matter of practice, practice, and practice. Whatever you want to acquire, it is whatever it is, public speaking, communication, whatever it is,
Mhm.
just you need to practice in such a way, try to make short goal, inch by inch, bit by
Mhm.
bit, and try to achieve it. Isn't it? Because when it
Exactly.
comes to public speaking presentation skills, there are so many things you need to work on, isn't it? How to carry
Yes.
yourself,
Yes.
what kind of language, how to
Mhm.
be very professional, how to represent yourself. Along with that, non-verbal communication also there, isn't it?
Right.
How to the hands movements, your eye
Yes.
contact.
Yes.
As you gave the example, okay, looking at the camera, we can see. So we can see the difference. So it takes time.
It takes time.
You are seasoned, experienced, but as a learner, if someone, even I tend to do it, Julie, sometimes whenever I'm alone, I like to do that kind of activity because somewhere I can build my confidence level a lot in that way. I like to record myself
Mm-hmm.
once
Mm-hmm.
in a while. Sometimes I feel, okay, Renu, you have to go with that kind of activity. So
It's the
I
most
feel,
effective exercise, even though it's deeply uncomfortable for people. So I would say, to your point, if it's deeply uncomfortable for you, just
Mhm.
try baby steps. If you're
Yes.
practicing for anything that's verbal communication,
Mhm.
recording is essential. And then, to the best of your ability, try to step
Mhm.
outside of yourself. You know, if
Mhm.
you were helping another student or you were coaching another client, you
Mhm.
would give them quality feedback while also not making them feel bad about themselves.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So how can you do that for yourself? You know, but I know for many people, they don't like the sound of their voice. This is interesting. I did a bit more research on this summer. It's extremely common for people
Mhm.
to be shocked if they have not been in the habit of recording themselves the first time they
Mhm.
hear it. There's a reason we don't like the sound of our own voices, and it's physical. It has to do with the
Right.
physics of your hearing. Your
Yes.
voice to other people
Mhm.
never sounds the way it sounds to you, but that's not a problem. Your
Yes.
voice is going to sound to you differently than it sounds to other people. But when you hear your voice recorded and reflected back to you, and you think, oh my God, other people are not thinking that. It's just, again, this is something to get used to. You have to practice and get used to the real sound of your voice
Yes.
in
Yes.
how other people hear it without this horrible feelings of, oh my God, do
Yeah.
I really sound like that? I promise you, the people around you, especially your friends and family, are not waking up every day and thinking, oh, she's so horrible. Does she realize how horrible she sounds? It's just the human condition. That's a normal thing. You know,
Yes.
the way our hearing system works is it's never going to sound the same to you as it
Mhm.
does externally. So that's another reason to record yourself. And
Right.
there's nothing you can really do about the quality of your voice. You can work on pitch, you can work on volume, you can work on commanding your voice better, but you can't change your actual voice. And so it's better to
Yes.
just know what you sound like and know what you're working with and try
Mhm.
in as detached as way as possible of making a little bit of progress without all these
Right.
horrible feel, oh my God, that's what I sound like, oh, and then shutting down. I do that a lot. And it's hard to
Yes.
get, it's really hard to get adult clients to record
Mhm.
themselves. Um,
It's
Kids are fine.
it
Kids are used
helps.
to doing new things all the time and they're in school mode and learning mode. And you say, okay, here's the assignment. I want
Right.
you to record yourself and do this. No problem. Adults do not like to be out of the comfort zone. And even getting them to practice in this way can be very challenging, but it is the single most effective
Yes.
way to get, you need,
Yes. I
it's data.
completely. Yes.
It's
Yes.
data. My data in
Yes.
the fall told me that when I'm tired, I say a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like to hear that, but
Mm-hmm.
next time I know I'm going to go to bed early, or I'm going to reschedule the
Right.
presentation if I'm not feeling well, because it's just not going to go well.
And I
That's
think
dangerous.
you don't have that much of time, so no need to record for 5 minutes, 10
Yeah,
minutes, even 1 minute and 2 minutes
right.
are enough, I would say, because
Yeah.
I used to do it initially when I started my journey with this language,
Hmm.
and it is really so helpful, I would say. You have to record yourself because you are going to observe the way you are speaking.
Hmm.
And this, along with that, I think we should try to be comfortable with our own tone, isn't it?
Yes. It's
What
about
you
using
want.
what you already have. Everybody I work with is perfectly capable of giving an
Uh-huh.
outstanding presentation with what they already have.
Yes,
Yes, we
yes,
work on transitions. Yes, we work on a couple of things, but a big part of it is just the fear of not being good enough. And they're putting all that pressure on themselves. Um, and working with understanding what you actually have and working with what you have is the first
yes,
step.
yes. And I think, Julie, comparison should not be there.
Right.
There is a like this kind of a tendency always
Yeah.
there, isn't it? We always try to compare. For example, I just want to discuss that one here.
Yes.
Being a trainer, you are carrying a rich experience, and I am a fresher. I can't consider myself okay carrying 15, 20 years of experience. So there is a huge difference. It is very natural. It
Mhm.
takes time to reach that level, isn't it? So I can't compare. What I can do is just practice awareness, and by the time I will reach that kind of level. So just try to acknowledge that one and be comfortable.
And
I
that's
want
so
to,
difficult for people, right? Because
yes,
I think particularly in the past 15 years you talk to older people in your life, talk to your
yes,
parents, talk to your grandparents. They say things take time. Good things take
yes,
time. And that's not the thing that we want to hear, right? Because as
right,
society is globalized and social media is such a big part of people's lives, it puts forth
yes,
this totally false idea that, this person here that you see doing something very well, that they somehow did that overnight. Um,
yes, yes,
that's just not true. It's
yeah,
true that in any society you have a spectrum and you have some people who are just born to do something, right? They
right,
might
right.
have be very good at a skill, but that's why we have to also work at understanding our
Mhm.
natural abilities and what we need to work on to grow. But at the end of the day, it's the same as it always has been, just as you say, things take time and practice. I started my company
Definitely.
in 2007.
Mhm.
I was working odd jobs because it's not like I had clients overnight. I
Right.
had to
Yeah.
conceive of the idea. I had to create a website. I had to put the idea out there, and I had to have some initial clients to practice with. So my rates were low at the time because I was new, and those clients were,
Yes.
they were paying for a service, but they were also helping me build my business. I couldn't live on that, so I walked dogs for an agency, and I worked in a restaurant.
Mhm.
And it wasn't easy, but I did that for 3 years. And then by 2010, I had enough client, and I would get a client, and then if I made a little money, I would reinvest in the business. But after 3 years, I had enough of a clientele because tried to deliver excellence to each one of those clients. So they would tell
Yes.
their friend, they would tell their colleague. So really it was a combination of having a web presence and word of mouth that built the business.
Right.
And within 3 years, I was able to quit the little side jobs
Mhm.
and live off of the business full time. But even then, there have been economic disruptions. There have been, the pandemic being a big one. It
Mhm.
hasn't been even a trajectory like this. It's been,
Yes.
in terms of sustainability of the business, it's was like this for a long time. And then there was a disruption, and I sustained, and then it got a little bigger, and then there was a disruption. And so
Right.
the other thing, to your point, is that things are not linear. Most of our lives are not linear. And
Right.
so you do
Right.
just have to keep going, keep trying, and eventually you'll hit a tipping point where it will improve. But skills don't come overnight,
Overnight. Right. Right.
no matter what the internet would like us to believe, because
Yes.
that's the selling point. There's money to be made off of
Right.
telling people that if you just do this, your problem will be
Yes.
solved. Or if you just follow these 3 steps, your problem will be solved. Or if you just buy my program, your problem will be
Yes.
solved. Things are not that easy, right? If they were,
No.
we would have figured it out by now.
For sure, Julie. I'm on the same page.
If there were a way to go from, intermediate level English to near native TED Talk speaker in
Yes.
6 weeks, which there isn't, we would have figured it out by now. And anyone who's telling you differently is just trying to sell you something. So
Very true. Very true. Just it is the part of marketing and promoting their product, whatever they are. But something which is very natural and very transparent nowadays, when it comes to develop a kind of a new language, when especially it is not your first language, it takes time. It is not related to 3 days, 30 days. I always discuss that particular point. No, it takes time. And that's why being a tutor, I mentioned already, comparison should not be there. Okay, this is
Right.
my journey. My journey is completely different from Julie, isn't it? You're different, my different. And you won't believe the moment I started my journey, so I wasn't comfortable on camera. I started my journey as a tutor on audio call. Over the call, yes, over the call, I used to take sessions, and that's how I'm here right away, that I'm very comfortable nowadays. And the moment I started to invite internationally some coaches, so initially I was thinking, okay, my accent, my language, my tone is a little bit different. So how am I going to do that? I asked that question multiple times, but I realized no. I don't want to compare. Whatever my objective is, it's very pure. So just do it. Okay, so I think it should be like that. Keep it very simple and natural, and practice accordingly. You will grow each single day.
That's an excellent example. So here you have somebody who wasn't even comfortable on camera, and look at her
Yeah.
now, right? And it
Yes.
didn't happen
Yes.
overnight. It happened in
No.
steps and stages with practice
Yes. And
and
still, I
consistent.
have been working a lot. I always keep myself very transparent with my audience as well. Just be comfortable the way you are speaking right away. It takes time. After a couple of months, you can see a change. One step higher, 5 steps higher, but it takes time. It's not overnight journey,
And failure
isn't
is
it?
part of it, or perceived failure, right?
Yes.
I have a
Yes.
client who has achieved most of his goals, at least the things he wanted in the next 5 years, but he always says, my superpower is I never give up.
Yeah.
And that's so simple. And I remember that on days that I'm frustrated. One of the stories he tells is that he wasn't able to pass the test to get into the university of his choice. And the way things worked in his country is you had a second chance to pass the test, but it's a terrible year. Everybody else goes on to university, and your job for 1 year is to just focus on passing that test again. And you have
Yes.
this sense that everyone else is moving forward and that you're stuck, in your life trajectory. But he applied himself, and, he studied, and the second, maybe even the third time, he finally passed the test. And even though he then entered university a little bit older than the cohort he had started with, now as an adult, none of that matters, right? Like he got into the program he wanted to. Who cares if it took him 3 times? And things are where he wants them to be now. And so that's the other thing too, is I think we're hearing a lot now about younger generations having real struggles with receiving feedback, or completely shutting down if they believe they have failed. And failure is just part of the process. There's no way around it. As long
True.
as you learn
True.
and you grow from it and you say, what did I learn from that? And
Right.
sometimes you learn that maybe you were on the wrong path. You thought you were on the
Yeah.
right path, but you weren't. And now you need to change paths. But it's just part of life. And so I feel like, we're just trying to impart to people the same wisdom that our elders have always known.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
things take time and practice.
Yes, yes.
Failure
And if you
happens in
are
every life. Yeah.
yes, like life is like a roller coaster,
Mhm.
isn't it? And peaks and valleys would be there always with you. If you are thinking that very smoothly, your journey is going to be, it's not possible at all, I think. Always failures come, isn't it? Always you are going to face some difficulties. Why? Because it's new. It's
Mhm.
new.
Mhm.
You are not expert in it. So definitely you are going to face so many challenges on your way and you have to work on it. And what I feel always whenever some challenges come on my way, so I feel okay. There is a combination of persistence and patience always
Mhm.
should
Mhm.
be there, and don't stop. There is always, I feel, whenever I feel okay, demotivation is there, so
Yeah.
always I take a pause in between. Okay, Renu,
Mhm.
take a pause, be chill, calm, because tomorrow would be something different.
Right.
Every day is not a same for you. So if you are
Right.
feeling demotivated, just to
Mhm.
take a pause in between, be chill, relax, composed
Mhm.
mind, and next day you can start again. So no
Mhm.
problem with the same, I feel. But yes, don't stop. Definitely you
Don't
will learn
stop. Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I
And we
still
have
remember.
yeah, American culture in particular really pressures people to
Mm-hmm.
expect to be happy every day.
Mm-hmm.
And almost like they're doing something wrong if they're not happy every day.
Yeah.
And it actually divorces us from our real feelings and is deeply unhealthy. And I think a lot of the destructive behaviors that people find themselves
Yes.
caught in are a result of this this idea that happiness is a consistent pursuit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the comparison, right?
Yes.
Then you have all of these platforms that, falsely show you how everybody else is happy and just absolutely living their best lives. And, maybe that's not how things are going for you right now, but people don't generally post the bad stuff.
Yes.
So much of this, I
That is
really
a
worry
point.
for people. I worry for people. I'm old enough to have a pre-internet brain, so I'm able to tap into my pre-internet brain at times and think, okay, wait, is this real? I don't think this is real. It's not possible.
Yeah.
When I go out into my community, I see people struggling right now with inflation to feed their families,
True.
right? But then I
True.
go onto the internet, as particularly in entrepreneurial circles, and I see people claiming, you know, to be um absolutely here at the height of their career with the successful business and this and this and that. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of them are faking it. I know a lot of English language professionals around the world. It is
True.
difficult to make money in this profession. The people who are sustaining themselves have done it through persistence and adaptability
True. True. True.
and changing when the change and delivering excellence. So delivering excellence to
Yes.
the clients, figuring out a way through when there are global economic forces that affect business. Um, and it's been interesting too since the pandemic to see how many people are kind of still standing. And the
Yes.
ones that I have connected with, all of their businesses have taken a different form since the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, which shows you the
Yes.
resilience and the adaptability. There were a huge number of language teachers who flooded the internet
Right.
during the pandemic. Many of them have since disappeared. Um,
True.
What's missing for me, I've been doing this again since 2007 as an independent, is the persistence and the expectations. So
Yes.
if you go into anything expecting to be successful in 3 months, that is completely unrealistic. You might
Right.
have some luck or a good wave, but you can't
Yes.
expect that initial luck or good wave to be always there.
Right. Learning a language is completely different. Okay,
Mhm.
it might take 1 year, 2 years, but when it comes to set up your own business, it takes at least more than 2 years, maybe 5 years,
Right.
isn't
And
it?
same with learning a language. And again, nobody wants to hear that, right? This is going to be challenging. It's going to take
Yeah,
persistence. You're going to have to find a way to motivate yourself over and over. You will have to be aware of what's going on and make strategic
right.
decisions, adaptations. But at the end of the day, it's what do the learners need and how can you serve them? And
Right,
that's why
right.
we are now focusing on presentations, because
Mhm,
that's what my learners need. And
mhm.
they need virtual presentation skills in this new way of working in a way that they didn't
Right.
years ago.
Yes.
But that's very different from what I did when I started my teaching career. You know, my
Mhm,
initial teaching career was very much grammar
mhm,
and academic writing and
mhm,
working with learners who wanted to go to graduate school in the United States, because that's where the need was and the demand was. And
mhm.
now that has changed. And so I have to change as well. But the only
Right.
reason I'm able to do it is because I have continuously worked on my skills for the past 20 years.
For sure, for sure.
Because that never changes, you know.
Right, right.
We
For a
can't
coach,
we can't expect to get to a certain level and just stay there without
no.
continuing to invest
Yes.
and adapt.
Yes, I'm also carrying the same mindset. Okay, Renu, every day you have to uplift your teaching skills.
Mhm.
And as a human being, whatever you can learn from the end of anyone, okay, you have to be ready, open, and welcome for everything. Okay, I think we covered presentation skills. Along with that, I want to know when it comes to social media,
Mhm.
there are so many videos on YouTube channel, Instagram account nowadays. Julie, please share your insights on that. Like people tend to make a few reels and videos. Okay, don't
Mhm.
use this word. You have to go
Right.
with this word.
Oh.
And more than that, they can't mention, okay, if you want to say, I'm very happy, it's right.
Hmm.
However, if you want to go with advanced word, you can use this one also. But
Hmm.
they are making a reels and they are marking a big cross.
Yeah.
Okay, big cross I have
Hmm.
seen, and it is
Hmm.
really, I feel very sad at that time. Why? This one, okay,
Hmm.
because if the level is basic, so I
Hmm.
think they can say. And I have heard many a times while listening videos related to TEDx speaker,
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
are ready to, they have been using very, very good, very happy.
Hmm.
So what is your insights and opinion for that, views on that? What is
I'm
your
so happy
idea
you brought
beyond
this
that?
up. Yeah, I hate this
Yeah,
approach. I don't think
yeah,
it motivates learners. It's what I call the fear-based. It's really just
yeah.
it's not even teaching, it's fear-based marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is really clickbait. Click on my video. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
make you feel bad. I'm going to instill panic in you that you've been, doing something terribly wrong, and I'm the
Yes,
person who can fix that for you. We don't do that in the classroom. Um,
yes.
when you think about in an institutional setting, if I went in every day and told my learners everything you're doing is wrong, and I started with this demotivation, this kind of threatening, my director would fire me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this
Mm-hmm.
is just internet stuff. This is people, this is teachers or business owners trying to stand out from the pack and getting
Yes.
clicks on their videos. That's all it is.
Mm.
And I have seen some talented teachers
Yes.
fall into this trap. I see some of these
True.
videos and I think, I know that you're trained well and I can tell that you know what you're doing. Please don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you would
Yes.
do with your, when you give your love to your students and you give your support to your students. If you're going to make YouTube videos, do that in
Right.
the YouTube video. This is just marketers telling people that this is what they
Yes.
need to do in order to get views and to rise, in
Yes.
viewability, right? And so it just, it's not that you can't, I mean, YouTube can be wonderful. I am raising chickens for the first time and I've used it a lot to solve some problems. But again, what's the source and what's their motivation? And if the motivation
Yes.
is to sell advertising or to get to the level in YouTube where you can actually make money off of advertising, then you need to be a bit careful if you're taking that in for your own
Yes.
development. Also, this is not how we learn. Little fragmented bits and pieces that are not
Yes.
connected is not the best way for us to learn. We already have so much
Yes.
attention deficit because of our phone addiction. And
Yes.
I think I told you this story in our former conversation. I was taking online guitar lessons,
Mm-hmm.
static. It was a video course. I love this guitar teacher. She focuses on
Mm-hmm.
beginners, and I thought there's so much applicability to language. She generously and freely, makes some of her YouTube videos available. But she also says to people, look, I'm not saying this just because I'm trying to sell you my program, but if you really want to learn
Right.
guitar, there are fundamentals and there are steps, and you have to do them in a certain order, and you need
Yes.
structure. And whether you buy my program or somebody else's program or you hire a live teacher, you need to have a structured program if you want to see progress. And it's the same with language.
Very true.
I don't know, I'm sad too that we've evolved to this place where people think, oh, I can learn by just following this person on TikTok. Well, maybe if that person is very talented and is giving you a structure, but if you're just scrolling every day and choosing little
Yeah.
pieces and you're not mind mapping things or making the connections, it doesn't stay with
Yes.
you anyway.
No,
So,
no, not at all. And just they are completely confused and hoping here and there, isn't it? Because there is not a structure.
mhm,
What I personally feel, Julie, first of all, when it comes to language learning, you have to understand your level of speaking and
mhm,
your requirement as well. And accordingly, you have to make a plan for yourself. Even though if
mhm,
you're, as you mentioned, you are going to hire a personal tutor as well, you have to share your requirements. Okay, this one I want to achieve. And
mhm,
I don't think so there is any harm to say I'm very happy,
mhm,
because I can't
mhm,
say it's not like that. If you are
mhm,
aware of it, very happy, you want to switch that word, okay, I want to use something. So if this is your target, then you can go with it,
mhm,
isn't it? Your
mhm,
foundation is already good. Now you can go, okay, I want to use something else, elated, content, delighted, you can go
mhm,
with it.
mhm.
But initially, I think this kind of videos somewhere not
Oh, it
good
drives
for
me crazy. I just want to say to anybody who's listening, if you're making videos, don't do this to your learners. And also, think about energetically where you're coming from. You're criticizing your
Mm,
target audience from the very beginning. Is that really what you
yes.
want to put out there? That's not what we
Mhm,
do in coaching. We meet the person where they're at and we build them up from there. We don't tear
mhm.
them down from the very beginning, because who learns that way?
Yeah,
Most of us don't, there might be some motivation coming from fear, but usually if people become if it's nothing but you're doing this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, people just stop doing it.
you're
They
right.
lose their motivation to try. It's like, well, what's the point? Everything I'm doing is wrong. And I think a
Yes.
lot of this, if you were to take the collective message of all of this style
Right.
of
You're
YouTube
right.
videos for language learning, the essential point is everything you're doing is wrong.
Mhm.
What a
Yes,
terrible
yes.
way to motivate. It doesn't work.
No, no, no. And as a tutor, you are here to simplify the things, isn't it? What you can do,
Mhm.
isn't it? Okay, Julie, thank you so much. But only one, last but not the least, only one
Sure.
question, that how to enrich our word power? Any strategy, any tip you want to share with us so that we
Oh,
can
sorry. Could you
follow?
ask one more time? I missed one little keyword there. Could you ask one more time?
Okay, okay. Let's suppose I want to enrich my word power. Okay.
A word
So
power.
what
That's the one I didn't
word
catch.
power?
Okay, how to enrich your
Yeah,
word power. Yes.
yeah.
Try to give you my quickest research-based speech that I can. Okay.
Mhm.
There is
Please.
passive vocabulary and there's active vocabulary. Everyone has the
Mhm.
same problem where maybe their passive vocabulary is rich. What do I mean by that? I hear someone talking, I read an article, I understand everything, right?
Mhm.
I feel the gap between, really feel the gap between that language that I'm able to interpret and what I'm
Mhm.
able to produce myself.
Mhm.
What you're able to produce yourself that has been learned properly and deeply and can also move into the short-term memory recall is the
Mhm.
active vocabulary. Again, same answer. It takes time, practice, and engagement, and
Yes.
realistic expectations. Okay.
Mhm.
Everyone's brain works differently, so all input is good. If
Mhm.
you're listening to podcasts, that's good. If you're watching movies, that's good. It's all good.
Yes. Mhm.
But if you really want to increase your word power, you have to focus and you have to choose, I'd say for most people, maybe 10 new words or phrases a week.
Mhm.
And you have to work with them
Yes.
repeatedly. You have to have repeated engagements. The research used to say that if you want to learn a new phrase in your target language well, you need on average, 7 engagements with that word before it's really going to be here. Now the
Right.
research says 10.
Mhm.
So an engagement can be anything. I try it out in a sentence. I create my own sentences.
Mm-hmm.
I look it up on some of the wonderful resources we have, like vocabulary.com, and I read it in 20 different contexts, to
Right.
really
True.
understand like how we use that word. I, but mostly speaking it, right? Opportunities to speak it and write it
Mm-hmm.
are what's going to help you. So the deeper your level of engagement, the bigger the chance is that you will truly learn that word and be able to use it in the right context.
Right.
Again,
Right.
this passiveness of just like watching videos and having someone explain to you a
Mm-hmm.
word or vocabulary, that's still passive input. And
Mm-hmm.
again, passive input's not bad, but it's not realistic to take passive input and expect to be able
Mm-hmm.
to do it actively. You have to put in the work.
Right. Right. Because our goal is to use it, isn't
Hmm.
it? It's
Hmm.
not the matter of to memorize the things and keep aside. We want to use it in our conversation.
And there are so many digital tools now that can create games for you. And
Right.
that's where the digital tools are brilliant. When it comes to
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary, you
Mm-hmm.
can create a personal list, like, and I tell
Mm-hmm.
clients, capture what's around you, especially
Mm-hmm.
if they're already in an English immersion environment. But if you're not in an
Yeah.
immersion environment, you can use movies, TV shows, podcasts,
Yes.
and, just pick 5 or 10 things per week. You only, in that moment, the only thing you have to do is capture it. Have a list, whether it's a physical notebook or, an
Yes.
app on your phone, and you build your personal list, and then you set aside
Yes.
time every week
Mm-hmm.
to work with the words on that list. And you can
Right.
use all kinds of digital tools to say, oh, create a quiz for me, or
Mm.
use artificial intelligence. This is one thing I've done with clients with ChatGPT. Tell me a story and use these 10 words.
Yes.
And
Wow.
it's
That's
amazing, right? And then you read back in the story and it will most of the time put the words in an appropriate
yes.
context.
It's a
Um,
great one.
yeah, yeah. So we have tools that weren't available even 3 years ago,
Yeah.
that you can self-study quite well with vocabulary. But again, you have to
Mm-hmm.
put in the time and you have to think of creative engagements.
Yes. Very true. Very true. Wow. Then definitely, if you are ready to follow all these techniques, so you will bloom like a beautiful flower in your future, isn't it? And
Well,
you will
again,
be
we
able
have to be realistic with
to.
our time. I think if there's any takeaway from this conversation, I think it's your input about being realistic and persistent. And
Why not? Why not, Julie?
uh,
Okay, before winding up this session, please tell me, did you enjoy or not? Please tell me,
oh
Julie.
yes, I absolutely, I feel comfortable with you, and we had already connected prior to this
Yes.
conversation. So
Yes.
I look forward to connecting you to some of my beautiful colleagues around the world, because I know a
For
lot of
sure.
really excellent, experienced teachers and coaches who will have different perspectives, all of them
For
authentic.
sure.
And I
Yes, for
would
sure.
just
I would
love to see you
invite
keep
them.
going with what you're doing, because what you're
Yes.
doing is, I think we're on the same page. It's the antithesis of the don't do this or you're doing this wrong. And it's
In a
needed.
very simple way, Julie, just I want to, in every video, even though when it comes to conduct a particular session, my
Hmm.
student, they always come up with a lot of questions. Okay,
Okay.
ma'am, I want to do this, a lot of things. Okay.
Hmm.
And I have been trying to make them understand, just be calm and follow the simple pattern. It's
Yes.
very simple, okay?
Yes.
You want to enhance your word power. You want to learn how to construct a
Hmm.
particular sentence. You
Hmm.
want to cover the grammatical error, whatever you are making. We
Hmm.
can work together, but bit by bit, not
Yes.
together. So be
Yes.
calm. It's not the matter of 30 days, okay?
Right.
You have
Right.
to make the part of your life if you really want to be a good speaker.
And
I have been
simplifying is
learning it.
the way to go with everything, with everything.
Yes.
We're so bombarded with information, it clutters our
Yeah.
brains, it clutters
Yeah.
our thoughts, it inhibits our learning process.
Yes.
And I think that for this, the rest of the 21st century, this is going to be the biggest challenge for everybody, is how do we gain our attention back and our focus?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I understand why, and I struggle with it too. I
Mhm.
understand why people want to do 15 things at once. The way
Yes.
our brains have been changed through digital technology
True.
but we have to actively work on simplifying and
Yeah,
focusing, and that's going to serve every area of your life.
true, true. Very true, Julie. Okay, so that's all about it. And really, I enjoyed your companionship. And truly, I'm speaking, Julie. Thank you so much for giving your precious time, managing your time for me and for my audience. I learned a lot, actually.
Wonderful. I'm glad. I hope it's helpful. So thank you so much
Yes,
for reaching out to me,
thank you.
and
Thank you so much
hopefully
for being with me, Julie. Have a great time.